And it's, by the way, it's lovely to meet you, and thank you so much for inviting me onto your program. Tell me about yourselves. How did I really don't know anything about, and I purposely did not look you up so I wouldn't have any kind of background information. So
Okay.
tell me about yourselves.
Since I started karate as a little boy in Johannesburg with a local karate sensei, spent our time, we did Goju karate only. And in those days, we were part of the South African Goju Association under Higaonna Sensei. Yeah, I was in a small like dojo in a little village, if I can suburb dojo, with an instructor called Paul Andre, and trained with Sensei Chinen and Sensei Higaonna as a child. As I grew up, I left the dojo for a bit. I had 2 years off in high school, came back to karate and decided I'd study sport and would want to become a karate sensei. And spent my 20s doing karate, slowly taking over the dojo. And so I have what was a dojo started by my first sensei, run by another sensei for about 10 years, and then I took over after that. Over the years, have trained in the Jundokan Shohonbu with the help of Sensei Ronnie. Train now in the OGKK.
Here in Okinawa?
Yep. Train with Kikagawa Sensei.
He's been to Okinawa, what, 8 times? 9 times?
No, about 7 or 8 times
7 or 8
now.
times you've been to Okinawa.
Oh, when was the last time you were here?
Last year, Sensei. I went to go and do grading.
Oh, for goodness sakes. Well, next time you come, please look me up.
Hi, Sensei. We'll make a plan.
We'd like to go
Definitely
next year.
make a plan. Hopefully at the end of next year, we'll be in Okinawa again. December 2026, hopefully.
Hoping. November,
December. So that we can do a little bit of sightseeing, but also grading and spending. Somebody has to grade. And I have 1 or 2 senior students who would like to experience Okinawa. So,
and related to that, Sensei, we actually wanted to ask you, because traveling to Okinawa is a dream for many people in karate. What would your advice be for people who are traveling to Okinawa in terms of, the best time of the year to visit? We were in July and I nearly died from the heat. And are there unspoken rules people should know about? You can't just, most people don't know that you can't just walk into a dojo. It doesn't work that way, that sometimes doors must be opened for you or there's honorarium fees. So what would your advice be for someone who wants to make the pilgrimage to the motherland of karate?
Well, that's a very interesting question, I'm going to. We have lots of time. You said we have a couple of hours to speak, or is longer, and you can chop it up however you like. But you're going to find me. I like to think I'm just a very transparent person, and for good reason. Other people think that I'm very outspoken, and one thing that 60 years or so of karate has given me, and I've never, the joke in my family is, I have a daughter who's a doctor and a son who's I make the joke liar, he's a lawyer. But my son was always, well, Dad, I want to be like you. And I went, do you want to practice? You want to teach karate for your living? He said, no. He said, one thing that we know about you is that you taught us from a very early age that how you learn, whether it's in school or, from a pedagogical point of view or just or academic, is trying to learn how to learn is more important than learning what to learn, because learning how to learn allows you then the freedom of unapologetic independence and finding or searching for something that you love or that speaks very loudly to you. Because if you are lucky enough to find something that you're very passionate about or that you want to dedicate your life to, you never have to work a day in your life, And I always thought, so the idea of embracing karate also as an industry. And when I started, the industry was very in its embryonic stages. I mean, I started training back in the '60s, and karate in those days is nothing like it is today, as far as an industry is concerned. So I just want to give you this as a little bit of a kind of a background to how I'm going to answer some of your questions, because after all of this time, they say, again, metaphorically speaking, I love metaphors. They're like, in Japanese we say koto waza, like proverbs in many ways. They represent the moments of clarity in wisdom, where someone may live a very long life and reduce an experience to a particular expression. The moon is the goal, and the mountain is the journey, and the finger at the moon. It's there are many pathways up the mountain, but only one moon to be seen by those who achieve its summit. That explores the possibilities of how to get to where you're going. And if you never get to where you're going, the journey itself was worth the effort. And so, I first came to Okinawa in the 1980s. When I first came here, I didn't have a letter of introduction, and I had been wanting to come for a very long time, by the way, but I didn't have any introduction, dojo to go to, or anything like that. I didn't even know anybody had ever been here, to tell you the truth. But my studies and research, under the guidance of my instructor, my teacher at the time. So I was very fortunate. After having trained for about around 10 years, I found another teacher whose name was Richard Kim Hanshi, established a kind of a replica of a Japanese organization in North America called the Butoku Kai. And in Japan, had been in the pre-war years had been referred to as the Dai Nippon Butoku Kai. I won't go into a long dissertation about what the title Dai Nippon means, other than to say it was, it had been something associated with the war atrocities committed against the Chinese and
Yep.
people in the South Pacific under that name, and so Mr. Kim used the term Zenbei Butokukai. Butokukai means the virtues of the martial arts that one would aspire to achieve. For example, it doesn't matter which stream or field or pathway of Budo or martial arts that you embrace in Japan. They all lead to the same destination, which is conditioning the body, cultivating the mind, nurturing the spirit through whichever spoke on the wheel you're traveling. But in those days, it was all mostly hands-on. I was very captivated by the competitive element of karate. And I'd also studied Chinese fighting arts, Southeast Asian fighting arts, did a lot of cross-training back in those days. And so I competed as a fighter and a kata and a kobudo practitioner. And that was kind of unusual back in those days, because most people either fought or did kata or did weapons. They rarely did everybody do all three together. And in Japanese budo, of which karate is an integral part, this is also practice. And the proverb is onko chi shin. I wish I could write that out for you if I had a thing here. What it means is it brings four characters together, which once again is a specific type. There are many proverbs, but proverbs that are written with four distinct characters are described a little differently, and there's a specific way with which to read them. And the essence of this proverb means something like, To understand the past or to study the old is to better understand the new, or to understand the present, or how and why things are the way they are today, because you understood how they were cradled, what gave them birth, what forces, either man-made or organically, affected their growth and direction to get them where they are today. And so that opened up a door through which to better understand how the art of karate originated, what forces affected it, development, why it is the way it is today. And the second proverb that he emphasized in his instruction when I was quite young and under his direct tutelage, as a jigiden type deshi, was another one called bun bu ryodo. Bun means bun, like scholarly or scholastic. Bu means like budo means martial arts, or military, or and ryo is a kind of just a particle in the four characters to bring them together, and do or michi means pathway. Sorry, I should have been more prepared.
No, don't stress, Sensei. This is awesome.
So this is I don't know if you can see that. Hold it up.
Yeah, we can see it beautiful. Thank you, Sensei.
Yeah, right. So this is a little. So anyway, I'm going to get around to answering your question about dojos to go to in Okinawa. When East meets West, there's always there's certainly a divergence. There's differences in culture. One is a typically highly conformist based culture like the East, like Japan, and usually the yardstick that we use in the West to measure our characters is this independence, our individuality, so to speak. Where me, I'm more important than the group type of thing. Whereas in Asian culture, it's the group over everything else. And there are lots of contradictions to that, incidentally. And one of my favorites is in a book that was banned here in Japan back in I think it was published in 1989 by Karel van Wolveren. It was called The Enigma of Japanese Power. There's a definition of the word wa meaning like wa for peace and harmony.
Yeah, harmony.
And I know from Wado-Ru and things like that. I remember the ideogram as a young man studying. I always thought it meant the peace and harmony of Japanese culture. But Wolveren, quite possibly one of the reasons why his book was banned, was he delved deeply into the history, particularly in Japanese culture, when it was making the transition from feudalism into its modern society, the imperial society. Remember, it was the merchant class that were kind of taking over the warrior class, and the idea for to be much more like the West than the East. But there were some things that Japan wanted to hold on to keep that uniquely Japanese essence, so to speak. And so during this restoration period in 1868, there was one of the many commanders or of industry at the time was someone named Inoue Kaoru, and he brought these three things on board from the old days. Despite changing into Western clothing and industry, mathematics, law, military transformation, sports, music, to become more like the West, and heavy congratulations for them, because in as little as 50 years, they went from virtually the Dark Ages into one of the most powerful nations on the planet. But these three things I just want to mention because they're quite important, especially for maybe folks who are looking to maybe better understand Japanese culture. Keep in mind that karate, which is an integral part of budo, the larger whole, is a microcosm of the culture from where it comes, a miniature representation of me talking like a Japanese again, of Japanese culture, value, heritage, legacy, rituals, customs, and so on. So the more you learn about whatever budo you're studying, so too the more about the culture you will learn, and vice versa. And so the three were Nihonjiron, Kokutai Hongi, and Shushin. So Shushin means something like to embrace the emperor as God, and not as a messenger of God, not like Jesus, but like God. That's important in understanding why the Japanese culture was the way it is, by the way, and why it was used as a political hammer back in the day by the commanders of industry. Kokutai Hongi. Kokutai Hongi means national hongi, polity, national polity. And we better probably call it Meiji no Kokutai Hongi, because it belonged to the Meiji period, in this restoration period. And that was things like learning how to put, and this is the point I want to make about Karl van Wolveren. So in those days, the idea, because remember that the majority of the culture were not of the upper class. And there was a class structure, structure in Japan, samurai, the warriors, upper class, and farmers, merchants and so on. And so by this time, those groups who had never been educated before in an academic sense, we're going to go to school. And so I think that part of the mechanism the government wanted was the control over the way they thought, because this was also a radical period of military escalation. And as such, Japan didn't have a warrior group anymore. So they had to rely upon conscripts. It was like the movie
Last Samurai.
They hire the guy to teach him how to shoot and things like that. And there was a lot of that. That's maybe a time for another lecture.
A long discussion.
Another discussion, right? So, yeah, you have to sometimes pull me out of this. I lectured at college for many years. The reason I went to Australia was to modulate the first ever martial arts instructor's diploma program. So that was really changed the way I thought about a lot of things. But anyway, so these three things about what a good Japanese person should be like and how they should think and what they should do to be harmonious with the group, And then, of course, Nihonjiron means the uniqueness, the Japanese race. So it was those three things that formed the foundation upon which everything else was funneled. And Wolveren destroyed that with his study into its anthropology, to say that no, it was a coerced and contrived effort on behalf of the commanders of industry at the time to have its population put personal desire behind a communal tranquility. Often the way Budo or karate, we're just talking karate today, is taught is there is no questioning of authority. There's a mechanism in place that the sensei say kind of means like it's how we would say birthday here, say, and sen means before. So it kind of means someone who was born before you, would be in a chronological sense of the word. Someone who came before you, someone who's gone before you. And as a result of that, and we should listen to those people, and we should be good and not bother them when they're teaching, because everything will be intuitive in time. And anyway, that's actually not true at all, but that's the mentality, right? And there's a mechanism in place culturally here, not just for martial art, but for Japanese culture.
Everything.
That is, it's called the imitative behavior. And the juniors imitate the ways of the seniors, and the mothers, the children, the daughters of the mother, and the boys of the father, and or the coach, or the sensei, or and we call that in Japanese, we call that senpai kohai system, and so that if you step outside that system, it's not a good thing, you get reprimanded for that. And what I mean by reprimanded, again, sorry to bother with all the metaphors, but this one's quite important. Sorry, koto was a proverb. The proverb is like this.
Yeah.
The nail sticking
Yeah,
out
will be hammered down. Yeah.
We've
Know
heard that
this.
one a lot.
You're looking at the nail. I'm Patrick Nail McCarthy. That's me. So anyway, anyway, this mechanism is in place because if you question authority, or you continue to display this independence and not this group conformist mentality, there's a good reason that you will be punished, and punishment can range. There's a long scale of punishment, by the way, from just being simply
Ignored.
ignored or laughed at or opposed, ridiculed,
Yeah.
until you get plucked out or ostracized,
Get out.
type of thing. Murahachibu, they say back in the old days, and that's an interesting expression. But anyway, if you get murahachibu, that's it. Your life's over because the mura is the village, and if you get thrown out, then that means your family, everybody's associated can't get food. They can't, you might as well just die there. So anyway, as I continue to crawl up this mountain over the years and cross-train, live here in the culture, study its, and I love it. Don't get me wrong. But that does not prevent me from describing it as it is, by the way. And when I studied the history of the fighting arts, and long before it became known as karate, which is not that long, less than 100 years. That's I think karate was. What was now described as karate was a kind of a haphazard transition from Okinawa to the mainland that started in the late teens. Maybe say 1917-ish. Demonstrations had gone on up there before that. You got like a 8 or 9 guys who are the principal architects of bringing up these haphazard practices that were basically called Chinese martial arts. Te is what we refer to as the fighting art. How is your? There's a very people always ask me about that. I go, no. Don't mix up the prefix and the suffix with the noun, and the noun is te, a t in Uchinaguchi t. There's a t t hand, fist, not well, fist is can, but and it's funny because if you're looking back at the history once again of the value of looking at history, there's a wonderful quote here. Now, the first time I learned a quote was when I was studying the historical works of Nagamine Shoshin, and then I would have the great privilege of being asked by him to translate this book into English, long time ago. But Nagamine Shoshin was a very highly regarded historian also, and the guy I trained with, Kian Chotoku, Motochoki, Aragaki, the who's who of fighters back in the day. So in his work, I learned about this guy. He was a politician here, by the way. His name was Jun Soku, and in Okinawa back in the Ryukyu Kingdom period. Although he was born just over here in Kume, in the Chinese district of Naha.
Kume village.
He got a kind of a in the village. Yeah, Kume over by. Oh yeah, you've been here. So you know where Matsuyama Koen is. You know where the Fukushu Koen, the Chinese gardens are over there.
Yes.
And then there's the Miyagi Chojin and So he not 300 meters from there is where he's from. And that's where he first established his first school, the Marindo School, by the way, to educate people. And what he used, just like I can't speak about South African culture, but in North American culture, we use sports in schools, especially in low in the hood, so to speak. We might use basketball or baseball or football to help children, condition the body, cultivate the mind, nurture the spirit, to give themselves the confidence to go on to greater things in life. So this guy I'm talking about, he used tea to teach the youth of his era. And in 1683, this guy was quoted as having said this through the Murindo school. He said to the people of that era, it's not enough that your tea is strong. Let me just use English. It's not enough that your martial arts or your fighting skills are strong in daily life. It has to also be balanced with your character in daily life. Your character, fugenjiko, actions, not words. It's not what you say that tells us who you are. It's your behavior. Because people manipulate the words all the time, but actions, they never lie, his name was Junsoku. They nicknamed him T. Junsoku. And so I thought, that's very interesting because, one of the temples that he was associated with is called the Enkakuji. And Enkakuji is a sect of Buddhism, Zen Buddhism, that reflects upon this, liking whatever it is you do to a pathway. It depends how far down the pathway you get before you recognize the destination is not the goal, it's the journey. And so this philosophy to live, to be a good person, saturated the life of not just Okinawa, but people who were trained in the fighting arts. And we have a term here in Okinawa. I don't know if you've heard of it. Have you heard the term chimu gukuru?
No, Sensei.
No?
Maybe if it translated, I might have.
So chimu, I think it's very uniquely Ryukyu Okinawan people. Anyway, chimu gukuru means something like this. It means to help you to teach, share, facilitate, assist, love, be nice to you in a way that helps you become a better person with no expectation of reward. Today, for example, we get caught up in ego and I did this for him, he didn't do that for me, and so we often get quite caught up with the imbalance in relationships. In these, I'm going to come around to this about going to the dojo. By the way, I hope all of this preface
comes together.
At least
it's a rich journey, Sensei.
Well, I promise I'll bring it together. I promise that's for sure. But so in Japanese culture, you have something called tatemai and honne. Are you familiar with those terms?
Not really, Sensei. Tell us a little bit more.
So tatemai. So there's a cultural phenomenon here that very few people. Not everybody feels it. Not everybody is able to quantify it, if I can use that word. What I mean by that is this: in the West, as I said, we measure our value through our independence, through our individuality. And I told you in the East, and particularly Japan, and and Okinawa, although it's part of Japan, remember it had a symbiotic liaison with the Middle Kingdom for hundreds of years. So there's a lot of Confucian-based mindset here, like the way you're like today, for example. Today is the first day of Obon for us. Today is the day when our ancestors come back to visit us. And during this period of time, then we'll go over to where they're living right now. Yeah. Have you been up to Hacksaw Ridge before to visit Miyagi Sensei?
No, Sensei, I haven't been up to Miyagi Sensei's grave.
Only the memorial.
Okay,
Only
well,
to the
anyway,
memorial
it's not there
in
anymore.
Kumi.
So, yeah, they moved him now. Yeah. So that's the stone monument for Higo Kanyo and Miyagi Chojin. Yeah. No. So Miyagi Chojin was buried. Well, actually, he was buried somewhere else, but they moved him here 50 years ago. It's called Urasoi Gusku Atto Cemetery Park. That's where he was born. And for those guys who study military history, that was where one massive battle took place in 1945. And I think they made a movie called Hacksaw Ridge that kind of depicts the battle that went there. Anyway, that's where, just a little over to the other side, that's where his tomb was up there, overlooking the Nakusuku Bay for a long time. Beautiful place. I've been there many times. I became friendly with. I had the great pleasure of meeting the last two sons of Miyagi Chojin, Kei Sensei Takashi. He passed away now some years ago, but Ken, he's still alive. But he I think he's 96 this year, but he moved up to the mainland to be with the rest of his family up there. Who's the kind of soke, the according to tradition.
Yes.
The soke, you know how it goes. It goes from founder to son
Father
to son.
to son.
That's the way a tradition is supposed to go, right? So Miyagi Chojin died. It went to his son. Then Takeshi Kei died. Then it goes to his son Toru, right? But anyway, there's another grandson who actually lives here in Naha, over in Naha, and his name is also Toru, like his cousin on the mainland. But he's younger, and he's a very well-known cyclist here. And he recently moved Miyagi Chojin's urn, the urn with his bones in,
Yep.
out from the haka over at the Urusoi Cemetery, over to. Have you been over to Shikenayen?
No, Sensei.
No. It's that's a good. You should go if you come. Let's go next time you're here. It's
Yes.
it's
Hi,
the
Sensei.
on the grounds is something called the bunya. Bunya's the guardhouse where I forgot the guy. Oh, Bushi Matsumura. He's not with your lineage. He's another lineage. But
Yeah.
if you go back far enough, it's all the same stuff.
It's everybody's lineage by the time you get to Matsumura Sensei.
Again, that's another thing about worship. And worship, and don't think that way. Don't. He's not. You're going to stick with this guy because he's our leader, type of thing. The grandson Miyagi Toru moved the grandfather's urn, where his bones are, over to this beautiful heritage residence called Shikinaen. And across the street from it, they built a brand new, absolutely beautiful temple. And in the temple, they have a burial section. So this is kind of like a new concept against old concept, new and old. To have a haka, and Miyagi Chojin hakas are huge, by the way, huge. You probably put a family of 20 in there, And I'll give you an example. A very, very dear friend of mine passed away a couple of years ago. He was a Goju person. His name was Chuck Merriman. And,
Sensei Chuck.
Chuck Merriman was a friend of mine. Oh, do you? Oh, there you go. So
You met
Sensei
him when you were in
Merriman was a
Okinawa.
mentor of mine. Sorry?
I met Sensei Chuck in Okinawa in 2003 for the first time. And we touched base, obviously, with our connection through the Jundokan.
But anyway, I opened a door for him to go to Okinawa to affiliate with the Jundokan. And actually, one of the last times I saw Sensei Merriman alive was here in Okinawa for the 65th anniversary of the Jundokan back in 2018. And I remember he and I sitting at the He and I sitting at the coffee shop on Kokusai Dori, and him saying, there
Starbucks,
was a
Sensei.
small group of us. Yeah, Del Hamby's office, by the way. That's the joke. And him saying to, very, very, very sincerely saying, I mean, I was in his 80s already, saying, when I pass away, I want to be buried here next to my sensei, and I remember saying to him, I said, well, if there's anything I can ever do to help, I guarantee I will help you. He goes, no, it's all taken care of. The Jundokan's going to take care of that for me, great. So jump ahead a few years. Sensei passed away. I think one of the last times I was actually speaking to him, I was over at Taira Sensei's house one night, Taira Masaji Sensei's house with, I think Gima Sensei was there, Kinzo Sensei was there, I think McGill DeLuce was there, James Pankiewicz was there. I think that was it. And we'd made a couple of calls. We'd called, on a, we're drinking.
Yep.
It's a nomikai after, and I'd called Bryson Keenan to say hi, and I called Chuck Sensei, and Chuck was sick in the hospital already at the time, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I took a couple of screenshots of him. He's laying there, and he goes, and he was so happy that we called, and it was not long thereafter he passed away, and so, his wife I knew for many years, from the time they lived out in Nyack, Connecticut. She said to me, she said, Patrick, is there a chance you can help us? Since he passed away, and they're not able to get to bury him. They said, she said to me, there were some difficulties. A foreigner couldn't be buried here, and there was something to do with Buddhist rites, and he couldn't get them. And I went, I never heard anything like that before. And the funny part about it was I had been speaking with a friend of mine on that particular day, and I think that was like a Saturday morning. I was having a coffee and reading the newspaper here, and on the back page of the newspaper, by the way, they advertise for burial tombs here. Like just the other day, I brought a big smile to my face. There was a advertisement for pets. Like, let me put it in English. It was like, did Fido just die? Did Fido just pass away? Well, you could have him entombed right beside you for the small fee of a la 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 la, and that way he could share eternity with you. And so on the back page of this newspaper, there was an advertisement for haka, burial tombs.
Yeah.
And underneath it said, "We speak English." And I went, that's strange. We speak English. You must be advertising for foreign people, So, but I just heard that foreign people can't be, So I called the guy, and I say in Japanese, "Moshi moshi, sumimasen kedo, Makashi Patrick to omoimasu, hakka ni kyomi aru desu kedo mo, shitsumon aru." And I got about that far, and he went, "I speak English." And I went, okay. So we start speaking English. And it's a really, really fun, there's just coincidence after coincidence after coincidence that happened. The guy lives 4 blocks down the street. No, not even like city blocks. Like he lived like 200 meters down the street from where I was I used to live in Tomigusuku in those days, in a place called Toyosaki near the beach, and or according to people who love to shop, near the outlet mall, and near the beach. And you were talking on the phone. He goes, "Oh, go out in the laneway," and I go out in the lane, and there he is. And we just walked. We started talking, and he said, "Come on, I'll take you to the haka. You have a look at it." And anyway, long story short is I wound up making the purchase of the tomb in which Chuck Merriman is currently buried in. And so I remember when I called his wife back, and I said, I have good news and I have bad news. I said the bad news, and I've been to Miyazato Eiichi's haka many times, maybe 25 or 30 times. And I can tell you this, it's a beautiful location, by the way, but there's no room there to bury anybody beside you. It's like the only haka in the area, and right beside it is like a kind of a warehouse for trucks. and then behind it is just like a steep embankment and a big hill like this. And then on the other side, there's like a Family Mart convenience store. And there's really, and then a big road. There's no room there. So even if they said, look, we want them buried here, and I think that's the reason why they couldn't fulfill, because they just couldn't fit him there. So I explained that to his wife, and she goes, "Oh, and of course she's reeling her husband's just passed away within 10 days or so, And so I said, the good news is I found him a great place up on Hacksaw Ridge. And she goes, where they fought the battle? I went, yeah. She goes, I'm not sure if that's a good idea. And I went, well, and by the way, and when I went to the burial place for the first time to look at where he's going to be buried, all the times I have gone over the years to visit and pay my respects to Miyagi Chojin's Haka, final resting place, I always used to go to the Urasoi Castle, Urasoi Castle.
Yeah.
And you drive up the back way, and then you walk up, and then you kind of turn right, and you go way over to the very end of then you go down the staircase in the back, and the staircase in the back takes you out into a little parking area, and that's where Miyagi Chojin's hut is right there. So I've been there, I got to say 50 times in my life, but I'd never been to it from the actual official entrance 500 meters on the other side of Hacksaw Ridge down on the hill from the street. So when I drove into the cemetery, I didn't recognize it at all. But as we drove up in the back alleyway to get to the parking lot, I said to the guy, I know this place. And I went, that is the tomb for Miyagi Chojin. And he goes, oh, my father practiced karate. I went, oh my God. The world just keeps getting smaller and smaller.
And smaller.
Well, here's the thing. The haka that I got for Sensei Merriman is like 10 meters away from Miyagi Chojin's tomb.
Wow.
And when I told her, anyway. So it's funny how this culture works. And anyway, so the point being is this: is the more you know about the culture, the easier things are. And I come from Canada, and I was born in the East Coast, and then as a teenager, I went to Toronto and lived there, and I finished my schooling there. Then I went to the West Coast. So I lived all across Canada, and I lived in the United States. I've lived in Australia, and I lived in Japan. Now I'm in Okinawa, and I've traveled the world for, maybe 50, 60 countries over the last, my life with this art. And what happens is the more you travel to other cultures, other countries, and study, I love language, so too do you learn more about yourself and the culture in which you're living. And what it does is it helps to eliminate that shroud of ambiguity that tends to shroud, I guess is a good word, the inner meaning and inner workings of how the culture works. So here we are 2 hours later. I'm going to answer your first question, right? You asked, I don't have any letters. I don't know anybody. I'm going to go to Okinawa. Gee, I can't walk into a dojo. Well, you know something? Yes, you can. You can walk into any dojo you want, anywhere, anytime, and under any set of circumstances, and nobody's going to stop you. No, nobody. Let me tell you about karate tourism, greed, money, and commercialism at a level right now I have never seen before, ever. But let's go back to the chimudondon, the kokoro, the essence of the fighting art. At a time where when you went to, remember, Joe, grammar's backwards, right? A place where the way, it's not taught. I hate the word taught. I hate the word student. because it creates such limitations just from its inception. I like the word learner because we're all learners. I like the essence of shoshin, that we're all beginners, you know. Hey, listen, even when you die, man, it's the first time you died, you know. So, I mean, if you embrace Buddhism, and so you know, it's you don't know how to die the right way, the right time, the first time. So, you know, you're a beginner there. You're a beginner when you're born, when you take your first step, go to school, get first fight, marriage, kid, you know, all shoshin. I love that shoshin mind, and I love it's when it's fused with the shuhari, the idea of learning from tradition, and then of course growing beyond or breaking the boundaries of the chains of tradition, which is inevitable for everybody. And then of course, this is not inevitable for everybody. When you transcending anything requires thought process, wisdom, guidance, and so on. You know. Or people get locked in. That's where you see that imbalance. And I'm the toughest. We're the strongest. We're the that's the imbalance. That's the people who haven't got to the re part. You know. And so in this essence of knowing this, you know, understanding Shohari in relationship to the culture, I love the allegory or the story here about and it works in the natural organic kingdom the best. I like drawing on those. You know, I used to use like, I don't know, Plato's cave allegory and stuff like that, and when I was lecturing. But in a simple form, it's just like this. It's like today, and I go back to this pyramid thing I was telling you. You learn this and this,
Yep.
and then you get to here, and then by the time you get to the point, there's not much left, and we wonder why we keep losing students at Shodan or Nidan or Sandan or something like that, because they just learn another kata, another kata, another kata, or something like that, you know. And we say, is that a problem of the art? Is it a problem of the teachers? What's the problem here? So can you imagine that pyramid turned upside down now? And instead of learning these, you know, these overly ritualized Kihon Waza, which were never even created by Okinawan people in the first place, that was created on the mainland in the 1920s when the Dainapan Patokai martial art culture put mandates down for the Okinawans wearing their underwear and saying you got to have a training uniform, adopt the belt system, the Dan-Q system. You know, all of these things came from other martial arts and even the game of Go and Judo and Kendo and stuff like that before it got ratified as a Japanese martial art in December of 1933. You have guys like Konishi Yasuhiro and Otsuka Hironori, the founder of the Ryobukai and Wado-ryu, who trained with a lot of the founders, you know, Miyagi, Funagoshi, Motobu, and stuff like that, who went on to create, I'm going to create modern karate in the image of how Judo and Kendo is learned. You know, you learn this, and then you get that type of thing, right? And at the end, the big prize is you can fight each other. Yeah, you can either randori or kendo, you know, with the 4 strikes. And so it was the Japanese who built modern karate, not the Okinawans. And by virtue of its popularity in post-war years, and Itosu Anko putting a modified version of these older solo practices into the school system as a mechanism to corral large groups of students into calisthenic exercises as a mechanism to focus on physical fitness and social conformity during this period of radical military escalation, the conformist mindset that you got to do it this way, is that the essence of the art falls quietly dormant to be taken over by something new, great as it was, but not to be embraced by what it was originally created to be. And so, anyway, can you imagine if you learn the concept first? And the concept is self-protection. And here's what's going to kill you. You can be choked to death or bear hugged or hair pulled or thrown down or stoned or, you know, there's all of these acts of physical violence that are indicative in human culture, that are habitual, that if you don't learn at least the fundamental understanding of how and why they're dangerous, what are the dynamics behind it, how could you ever possibly then learn to escape or counter it? I mean, it's not rocket science, you know. And so everything, you know, is then conceptually brought down to percussive impact. You know, pick the tool that transfers the kinetic energy of the body? Is it a finger to the eye? You wouldn't want to punch a guy in the chest. I'm over 100 kilograms. You hit me in the chest, I'm going to go, I would hurt you now. But at the same time, I wouldn't want to gouge my finger to the chest. I might want to gouge my finger to my eye socket, or fish hook my lip, or bite your ear, or headbutt your face, or bounce it off the ground. Those are realistically charismatic, violent behavior associated with the brutality of violence. So then why isn't that reflected in our training? Fight the way you train the way you fight, and because largely what's being passed off as karate today, it has become a cultural recreation, a rule-bound sport, and I don't speak of that in a bad way. I'm just saying, let's quantify what it actually is, so we can better understand what it was, and in doing so, it then doesn't become rocket science to trace it backwards to figure out, by cross-comparative analyses of other empty-handed fighting arts around the globe across the passage of time, where their methodologies were not lost in the sands of time, to figure out this stuff. And there's a lot of wonderful examples across human history for this. And so anyway, can you imagine we turn the pyramid upside down, and now you learn this conceptual practice, and then you start expanding upon the conceptual practices of these, how to handle these acts of physical violence. And there's, I always love it. Oh, he doesn't know how the person's going to be attacked next. No. And that's the wonderful part about the familiarity of kakedamashi, of joining hands together and starting with a push, a shove, a grab. It's unscripted, it's random. And in the same way that the little lion club is playing with each other, and mom doesn't come back and say, you've attacked him wrong. The idea of playing the fighting arts since the time you were old enough to walk, until such time as you gain, forget the belts and the certificates for a minute, until you gain, what's the word I'm looking for? Would it be called functionality? Okay, there you go. So I don't know what Don or rank you put on functionality, but it's like when a person does attack you and you're not expecting it. It's not the, what? Honey, hang on. He wants to fight me. I'll catch up with it. Hey, if I'm not there in 5 minutes, start with you. I'm just going to get in a fight here. That's not self-defense. Now, you might be fighting to save your ass if things go wrong, but that's not self-defense in the original conceptual theory as the art of protecting yourself was meant to be. So, hence the idea, karate is a defensive art. Now, whether you need to make it offensive initially to prevent the onslaught, that's about perception, That's, you have to perceive, go no sen, sen no sen, and sen, right? And so understanding these things helps us understand that. So anyway, it's the 1980s, I go, what are we going to do? By the way, just to tell you how crazy we were in those days. I go to this, no hotel. The international airport was not there in those days. This is a tiny little airport. So I get to the airport. I know one word of Japanese, which is daijobu. I don't know anything else. I learned that from my friend Jim Sylvan. Daijobu means okay, right? So I go, yeah, no, Okinawa, lots of Americans there. Well, no problem. I never saw one American when I was here. They were there, but they're on the base, And, so there's no kaishu door. There's no, the modern infrastructure that's here that you take for granted now was not there then. No monorails, no big hotels. It wasn't there, right? So and I see the sign that says hotel, flashing lights. I go, that's it. We got to get off on it. So we get the taxi driver to take us down to Kokusai Dori anyway, and but we see hotel. So he drops us off in Tsuji. I don't know if you know where Tsuji is, and it's the old brothel district, right? And the cab driver just going, I got a couple of American, And by the way, if you're white skin, black skin, white skin, if you're not Japanese and you get in the
You're
car, you can't speak
American.
Japanese, you're an American. You're American, right? So anyway, I don't want to be discriminatory there. It's just American, right? So I'm American. So the cab driver just deduces, American. And if you're American, you're a GI, right? You're GI. American, GI. And I keep hearing the word hotel, hotel, hotel. That means
Yeah.
a brothel. So Americans want to go. A couple of Americans in the car. They want a hotel, so they want to go to the brothel. So he drives us over to, and he goes hotel, hotel. And I went, oh, thank you. They give them money, and they all love American money in those days. By the way, no, I wasn't using Japanese yen in those days, American dollars. Anyway, so we get out, we go in. It's the window. I'm talking to the guy, hotel, hotel, and he goes. He's saying to me, he's going, ichijikan, nijikan. And I went, what? So what he's saying is 1 hour or 2 hours is what he's saying.
2 hours.
And I don't get it. No. And it's a couple of guys together on top of that. He's going, I don't care. I'm not. It's a love hotel is what it is, right? And that's an interesting story for another time. But anyway, so I'm in the hotel. The next day, the bill was ridiculous amount of money. The next day, the guy kept knocking at the door. Everywhere. Get out! Get out! Start going out! I always wondered why the bed was a heart-shaped bed. It used to go around in a circle with the starlights. Anyway, that's another story for another time, right? But anyway, so next day we go to Kokusai and questions talking, and we get pointed toward Shirados. So Shirados in those days was on the same street as it is today, but it was across the street and back up this way a little bit from here. You see. So anyway, so we go to them. We go in, and they're all hello. They have a couple of words of English. Nakasone used to work himself there with his wife. The kids were just infants at the time,
Little.
and and it goes, and we said we just wait around. And as we waited around, sure enough, and by the way, and I went there, it was end of June. I said June, July, and August, and I left in the first week of September to get back home, by the way. So I spent the whole summer there. So I know what sweltering heat and rain, monsoon rain's like. And so, and that's how we start. Oh, this is the address of the Jindokan. Here's the address for the Meibukan. Here's the Kodokan. And that's how we went. And we just would walk up and gi in the bag, and we learned it very early that this culture, and I'm gonna tell you about Tatemae and Honne in a minute, but this culture is what they call a culture of omiyage. It's a gift giving culture. And look, and I'm sure if I show up with a Ferrari out front, I'm going to get special treatment. But as a rule, it doesn't matter that if you brought a small bag of cookies for $1 or and by the way, this is a drinking culture, and more so in Okinawa than on the mainland. I think the Okinawans drink 17 times more than the mainland counterparts, just to give you an example. So, if you showed up with a bottle of awamori or sake or whiskey, some beer, that's always well appreciated, by the way. And I knew that, and our dollar was very strong in those days. I think I was getting about 290 yen to the dollar, which is today, it's taking a beating. It's on par, pretty much on par. So anyway, so I go to the dojo and I stand. You knock at the door. You edge your way in. You being very polite, edge your way in and smiling and bowing like this and ataijobo like that, ataijobo. And that the sensei would send someone over, and they quite often they'd have a word or two of English, and you say no, Canada, Canada. They go, oh, America. No, Canada. Oh, Canada. And so it's training. And you give a little omiyage, and they look at it. So what we didn't know, and I'm going to tell you this about Tatemae and Honne now.
We were having such a good time recording with Hanshi McCarthy. The entire interview runs to 3 hours, 45 minutes. So it's going to stop there for now. And I hope you will return with us in a few weeks' time to see the sequel and perhaps part 3. We had such a fantastic time. We didn't have to introduce ourselves. We just hit the ground running, and it was a great interview.
Would love to hear your thoughts in the chat, in the comments, and I hope you found his meandering but incredibly dense thoughts and anecdotes valuable. We'll see you soon.